shit. Yeah? Yeah, welcome everybody to Live Talk with Colton Ford. I'm Colton, and I'm talking, and it's live. Cool. And I have to say, I'm really, really excited to have my guest this evening. She was born in Havre de Grace, Maryland, which I've never heard of that fucking place in my life. It's like, where the fuck is that? And she has been knocking our boots off for the past 20 years with hits like the blockbuster Free, right here, and Joy, How Long, Show Me, If You Could Read My Mind with Amber, Jocelyn Enriquez, Scandal, that was a jam too. Give It All You Got, Automatic, just to name a few. I mean, one thing I'd like to add, virtually every one of her singles has reached top 10 on Billboard's Hot Dance Club Played chart. That's amazing. And she is amazing and gorgeous and a friend of mine, and I love her dearly. Miss Altrinite, hold on a second. Let me shut you off for a second. All right, now I'm toggling back. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you? How is everyone? Hi, STL Yaka.
I'm doing good. I think everyone else seems to be doing good. People get into the queue, and then the two closest to being on air are going to be in these boxes. So just to let you know, when we open it up for questions, I'll click on you, and you can speak your piece and say what you want, and you're free to do what you want to do. So I'll try. Interestingly enough, back in the late 80s, you were going to college taking pre-med courses. And I know it was around about that time that you connected with the Basement Boys. You guys did It's Over Now, and that kind of led you to your debut album on Warner Brothers. Can you tell me the whole dynamic that got you keyed into music and out of pre-med?
Well, let's see. In the timeline, I hadn't actually started getting into the deep pre-med courses. I'd literally just graduated from high school and started going to the clubs that summer. And when the fall came, it was time to, start college. So, I kind of went through the motions because that was, what I thought my path was, and I was definitely interested in medicine. So I was in it, but I wasn't 100% where I needed to be mentally. At that time, I fell in love with the nightclub scene and the energy and the people and the music. And one thing led to another, and I met the Basement Boys, and we just started randomly working on music, just recording tracks. I had never done any kind of music before. I'd never sang before. I'd never written songs. So it was really, for me, very experimental. I was just a kid, fresh out of my teens, barely, and just kind of having fun. It was just a fun thing to do on the side. When I actually wrote It's Over Now, which was my first single, I had no idea that it was having the impact that it was at that time, both domestic and abroad. And it wasn't until people started calling me from Warner Brothers saying, we're going to sign you, we're bringing you over to England, we want to shoot a video, we're going to put the record out. It wasn't until then I started kind of getting the memo that something was going on. And then when I finally went to New Jersey to Club Zanzibar, where Tony Humphries was the DJ, who was also pivotal in making that record become what it was as far as its profile at the time. And people were singing that tune like 3 and 4 times a night. He would play it over and over again, and people would just be hands in the air. That's when it really resonated, like, okay, your life is about to change in a way. So I was just open to it at the time to see what happened. I felt like I had nothing to lose.
Now, with what you just said, was this something that you ever thought about or fantasized about or dreamed about when you were younger? I mean, what were your musical influences, and were you inspired by them? And thinking about what you could do with that inspiration in the music industry? Was this something that you had considered before hooking up with the Basement Boys and having that opportunity presented to you?
You know, I had never considered it professionally. It was something fun I did in while I was in high school, just kind of doing like events at school with like my closest friends. We had a little group, it was 5 of us, and we used to do choreography and perform at high school events by stuff by Five Star or the Jacksons or anybody that was like a group and had serious choreography going on. It could be New Edition or whatever. But I was really regimented and a bit of an asshole in how I made them work to get it right. It was like that was probably already a part of my character in that way. I really took it seriously, even though it was just for fun and for school and just, kind of that kind of performance. But that was really the only kind of lane. I mean, I sang in my church growing up a little bit, but even in that place, I wasn't really like the singing diva, out front that carried the whole choir kind of thing. Like, that was never my position. I was always really comfortable, like, chilling, towards the back and just kind of carrying my area. So being out there and in front, I didn't even know what my voice could do. I wasn't used to my voice, so when I started recording and hearing it back, it was real discombobulating. Because I didn't even recognize the sound in that way. So it wasn't something like I used to hope and dream. One day I'm going to be a singer. I'm going to write songs. I'm going to do this. I wanted to be a journalist at one point. I wanted to be a dancer, I guess, and all those creative things were bubbling around just in my personality. But by the time I got to an age where I really could figure out this is what I'm going to do, it was really the pre-med path. I really had this grand design on being a doctor at some point.
Wow. Well, you became a doctor of music, essentially. You helping us all with your music, honey. Well, then that must have been quite a journey. I mean, a major label's coming after you to sign you to their label. You put out Blue Notes in the Basement, which spawned club hit Scandal, which is such a great jam. I love doing that for you on your birthday several years ago. Remember that? Is It Love, Deeper Love, and Rejoicing? And then you followed that up 4 years later with your sophomore album, One Woman's Insanity. Tell me about, because, anybody that's done the major label thing has their stories. What was your story? And I know after that sophomore album, after that sophomore album, I know, cry me a fucking river. After that sophomore album, you left Warner Brothers and signed with Strictly Rhythm. So what was the Warner Brother experience like, and what facilitated the move to an independent, which, back in the day when you got with the major, it was a major deal. That was something that everyone aspired to, but not many people knew that was a great thing, but it didn't mean that it was all going to come together for you. But anyway, tell me what your experience was like and what facilitated the move to Strictly Rhythm, which turned out to be incredibly successful.
Well, it was a different time in the music industry. I feel like it's, light years ago when the car was first made. No, but it was a very different time in music, especially in the dance music genre, in house music specifically, because you're talking about when house really kind of first came out of Chicago and started hitting really big in the major metropolitan cities, Baltimore being one of them, and we kind of had a hub of artists here that were being signed to major record deals. A lot of major deals were being given to underground/house artists at the time because it was a new sound that was kind of bubbling under. And the majors came in right in time to kind of capture it, give it a platform, and see if it had staying power. It was basically kind of an experiment, as it were. For me, in the beginning, it was really a great thing, and I still say even towards the end, when it kind of all fell apart, it was still a great thing because it set a precedent in terms of my career, in terms of perception. And that's half the battle right there. It's how you are perceived by your audience. And, the reason that it seems so glamorous to be on a major is because that says to people that there is a commitment to you backed with finances by this company. So therefore there must be some value and credibility to what you're presenting. Now we all know that there's, a lot of bells and whistles and trappings that can be, presented around an artist, and so that isn't always the case. But, as far as what people's image of being signed to a major is, that does mean something. And for me as an artist, it gave me a platform immediately to have real budgets put in place, to have marketing and promotion things going on with the product that was being put together, to be able to afford to have great production being done, to work with varying producers, to have videos done, to be able to have my records worked at radio, worked at club level, worked on all levels. So yeah, it kind of set a tone and introduced me to the world in a different way, on a different level. And I was actually, by being signed to Warner Brothers, it was Warner UK, so I was actually a domestic artist in the UK and import in the US. So for many years, a lot of people thought I was British, which was pretty interesting as well. But it set the tone, it set the bar really high as far as what I wanted to present, continuing in my career. Now, fast forward, by the time we got to the One Woman's Insanity album, the music was still changing and evolving, and the style of underground house that we did for Blue Notes in the Basement was a different period now, and the sound of house music was very raw and organic. By the time it came around to do the second album, the expectation level was different, and I was also transferred from Warner UK to Warner US. So now I'm being positioned to be introduced to a different market. The U.S. market, just generally in its attitude and its musical ear, is very different from the UK and European market, where there's a bit more varying in styles of what you can do abroad. And in the U.S., it's a little more compartmentalized for many different reasons. That's a whole nother chat. But suffice it to say that the expectation was different. And so we felt that we met that challenge, but there was a bit of creative difference in terms of where the Basement Boys wanted to go creatively and what the label then expected them to do. And we kind of got into a place where they wanted me to go into a more R&B lane, and be in a more straight-laced kind of R&B lane where it's very defined what your demographic is. It's not any alt-leaning kind of stuff. And it just kind of got to a place where it wasn't working for either party, and the label let us go after the second album. And that pretty much was the end of that story. But the great thing about that experience is that it had already set up my name globally. The work had already been done, the foundation was laid, and then it was just a matter of kind of taking that and building on it, which is what happened once I went to Strictly Rhythm.
Hey, Matthew, you want to ask Ultra a question?
Sure. First off, can everyone hear me? Yeah. One question that I would like to ask is, this isn't really a moniker I've heard associated with you as of late, but I think in the earlier stages of your career, particularly around Blue Notes in the Basement and One Woman's Insanity, you were sort of defined as the diva of despair. Did you ever feel that there was any validity to this moniker, or did you feel it misrepresented your work in any way? What were your thoughts about that? I'm assuming you've heard that before.
I've heard that a million times, and I didn't mind it. I thought it was pretty interesting and pretty cool. And I understand where it came from. I mean, at the time that we did Blue Notes, that first single, again, It's Over Now, it was a different kind of tone than a lot of other records that were out at that time. It had a very distinct kind of vibe. It was very dark. It was very moody, kind of bluesy, thus the name Blue Notes from the Basement. And it was based on the kind of jazzy stylings and the raspy quality of my voice. And so it gave a more melancholy kind of flair to the style of music that we were doing. Our style of writing was very melancholic, very bittersweet. We wrote about what we felt. At that time, we felt a lot of heartbreak. I don't know, at that time, we were just kind of writing off the cuff. It wasn't by any grand design. What we wrote is just whatever particular track inspired a certain thing. And I still write that way. And a lot of times if I'm listening to a track and it's giving me a feeling of happiness or joy or, you know, melancholy, whatever, blues, then that's the tone that I'm going to end up singing in. So, yeah, a lot of those records, and also with Basement Boys, they were very young in their production style as well. So the tracks were very, very raw and very stripped down, and my voice a lot of times is just sitting right out there, kind of in your face and naked. And that's a very bluesy kind of thing as well. You know, there was no hiding, even the bad stuff. It was kind of like right there, here it is. You know, and so it did have a very you know, a bit of despair, I guess, to it. But that was cool. Like, it still was a distinction. I don't, you know, it never bothered me.
Well, I don't think it bothered many people because look at what you've done with that despair and that sexy, bluesy grit to your voice. You have a wonderful, wonderful sound to your voice, which is very unique and really defines you. And puts you in a place by yourself in that regard. So your voice is very distinct. When you know people hear it, they know it's Ultra Mate. That's a major thing. And I think that you know, for me, it just engages me and pulls me in, and I just kind of want to roll around in it. And I'm gay, so that's something, okay? But let's talk about Situation Critical, which was your huge record on Strictly Rhythm, and obviously Free, which was such a worldwide phenomenon, was on that record, as well as some other hits, Found a Cure, Release the Pressure, New Kind of Medicine. Tell me about that experience and coming into that kind of recognition. I mean, that's...
John Theophone, who were Mood to Swing at the time, we knew that there was an instant chemistry in their style and mine. And the four of us, that being them two, myself and Bill, pretty much just got into a little cipher and was like, what do we want this song to be about? Like, this is the one. We need to really make this happen and make it, cohesive and impacting and, you know, just all of these things. It was a really tall order. The only thing that I really knew is that I wanted it to be a heavy guitar-laden song. And the rest was history. We came up with the... Good.
I can't wait till they fix it so it's anyone can just chime in because it's a bitch. Well, the Stranger Than Fiction album, that was the follow-up album to your Free release and all of that success. Did you feel any additional pressure having had the success with the prior album? And I noticed you were working with producers The Influence, Attica Blues, For Hero. You were collaborating with Nona Hendrix, Lenny Kravitz, and Dea Davenport. I mean, those are really fly people. So was the expectation high, not only because you were coming off the success of your prior album, but also because of all of these associations?
Yeah, it was all of that. There was a lot of pressure. I mean, there was pressure from go. Once we wrote Free, and like I said, you know, the only direction that we had was that I wanted it to have strong guitars. I wanted it to have a two-guitar part going, something very melancholy and sad, which was actually inspired by R.E.M's Losing My Religion. I forgot to tell you that. The sad, melancholic guitar in the beginning, but then I wanted it to have a very kind of aggressive groove ride going on under it. And Lem came up with the concept of, like, free, like everybody's free, and everybody can relate to that. So we put this together. We did 12 inches. We did white labels, which you could do at that time. Sent it off to WMC that year, 97, and it was literally like the shot that heard around the world, and it was scary. It was everywhere. It was just massive. So we, you know, once that, just, you know, even getting to the point of writing the single to back that up, you know, to come behind that, to get to Found a Cure, it took a year to write Found a Cure, because finding something that was strong enough and had its own personality enough to come behind Free, and Free was still heavy in the charts, still way present. It had not gone away at all. So it still wasn't even the right time to release, a second single off that album. But by the time we got to Found a Cure, we felt like that was the right single to come behind that. And the New Kind of Medicine happened on its own, and it kind of broadened the album out and rounded everything out in a really nice, neat little package. And, the 54 song, If You Could Read My Mind, came in there from Miramax in the film, all in that same time and process. So there's this mad, thing going on, and then it's like, oh, now it's time to write another album. What you gonna do?
I have to say, just as I mentioned that your voice is so distinct and defining, you know who is singing when you hear your voice. That guitar riff at the beginning of Free, forget about it. Like, it's on from the moment that track starts, and it's that track. Like, that guitar riff was so brilliant, and kudos to that girl. Now, so working with Nona Hendryx and Lenny Kravitz and Dea Davenport, I mean, those are some special artists. Was that just yummy candy?
It was stupid yummy, and it was just very much like, you know what, I've got the influence right now and the budget. Like right now, nobody's like saying, no, that's a little too high spending. Because we spent a lot of freaking money on Situation Critical, especially being on an independent label, and the trust that they put in us to just let us have free reign and make the album that we wanted to make, and didn't give us a lot of drama about budgets or whatever. That's a lot of trust coming from an independent. So I do have to give strictly props for that. And then going again for round two with Stranger Than Fiction, and the people that we wanted to bring in, like Nona and Lenny and India and, a whole host of others, that was a lot of trust from them. So we had a really great relationship through that period, and I learned some wonderful things from people like Lenny Kravitz. I mean, the whole time I was in the studio with him, I was trying very hard not to be starstruck, but I was like, Lenny Kravitz is writing on my album, and he's singing, he's playing guitar, it's crazy. It's like, what do you do? It's like people that, you've listened to on the radio, or, like when I met Boy George, and he was like, oh my God, I'm such a fan, and I'm like, are you shitting me? Like, what? Are you kidding? I sang Mistake Number 3 on stage for the first time at junior day in high school. What the hell? And now I'm sitting here like, we're just kicking it like that. It's just weird how things can transition like that.
Kicking it like peeps, like, you guys hanging, you're doing your thing, and I had said I would love to roll around hearing your voice. I just want to roll around. I'd roll around with those cats, especially Lenny. He's cute. Matthew, would you want to say something?
Yeah. Well, first off, it's actually perfect that we're talking about Stranger Than Fiction, because one of my all-time favorite songs by you is on that album, Get It Up the Feeling. And a few years ago, you came to Toronto for Pride, and I was at the front of the gate screaming like a schoolgirl. I started crying, but you actually made my day that year, because I kept screaming, sing Get It Up, and you actually got your DJ to stop, and you sang it a cappella for me. But I did have a question. I had read somewhere that when it came to writing Stranger Than Fiction, you had never really worked with women before on a recording, or maybe many women, and so working with Nona and India, how did those experiences differ for you from working with a predominantly male songwriting and production team on your records prior to that?
Am I on? Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's very true. Up until that point, and it really didn't occur to me until that point when it was time to start working with that. I had been a fan of India's for a long time, and we had met quite a few times when she was with Brand New Heavies. And she was living down in New Orleans, and Bill had hooked us up, thought it would be great for us to just get together and write some stuff. So I went to New Orleans, and kind of stayed with her for like a weekend, 2 or 3 days or something like that, and we just wrote and came up with whatever we could come up with. And we didn't put any pressure on it. I'm not that kind of person. I mean, I'm very flexible in my personality and very flexible in my style of writing. And I believe just like vibing with people. If you have a great vibe and you trust in each other's talent, then you'll come up with something really interesting and cool. And you've got to be open to the process and open to each other's particular styles and energies, and kind of let each other manipulate where things are going to go, because you're going to come up in a completely different place than where either one of you would have on your own. So as long as you're open to that and you don't have any of your own junk like in the way, other than like a little starstruck or something, which is fine, like with Nona Hendrix. I mean, come on, LaBelle, really? But, we worked through it, and most of the time I was just kind of in awe of her in particular, and seeing someone, as a woman that's been in the business for many, many years, on many different levels, and, out front as the artist and the singer, and now as a producer, and always have been a songwriter as well, and see, this really beautiful black woman, and someone that, I grew up, that in my mind is an icon. That was pretty amazing to work with someone like that. So again, it's just, being open to the process and trusting whatever is going to happen, and just, you can't be married to ideas and concepts a lot of times when you go in to write. Some people don't like writing with other people because they feel like it just kind of pushes and pulls from their creative energy too much, and they don't really know, where the boundaries are. I try to be very open and continually be a student of what I'm doing. It's good to come to the table with ideas and concepts, but be open to how they, may shift like the wind, really.
And I also think, just talking on your point, if you're vibing and trusting each other, the collaborative process just brings out the best in everybody, and you, in a collaboration, become more than just that one, than the one piece. You become this collaborative force, and if you're able to be in the moment with it and let it flow, then you don't know what you're going to get, but it's going to be something really wonderful. I mean, I love it. And to talk about your Grind, Silk, and Thunder album, one of the collaborations, Give It All You Got, we had our friend Chris Willis on there with you, and the Love's the Only Drug single, which is another track that I absolutely love. What was the inspiration for that track, if there was one?
Let's see. Love's the Only Drug. Let me think what was going through my head when I wrote that song. I think it was kind of hearkening back to the days of 54 in a way. It was kind of paying homage to one of my icons, Grace Jones, and doing something that kind of had like a sleazy city kind of vibe. I love music to be understated sometimes. I don't always want to be like the screaming diva, and there's no space left, for the music, no openness in the music. I like for there to be open spaces in my writing style and in the music. What you got, Matthew? What you got?
Just speaking about the Grind, Silk, and Thunder album, there was obviously 2 covers of your own material on that CD, Scandal and It's Over Now. Why, I guess it's a 2-part question, why did you decide to cover those tracks, and what was it about that time in your life that made you want to go back and revisit that music? You did a phenomenal job with the covers, by the way, the reinterpretation. I really like it. I still get down to Scandal.
Well, because those 2 songs were like a lot of people's favorite songs by me. But, the funny thing is, like, as the years go by, new generations of kids come up in the clubs and they're listening to dance music. And, I was continually reading in the press over the years, Ultra Dente and, Free, or a lot of kids that I was running into, I came out, when you released Free, I was coming out and it did this and it did that. And those kind of things are wonderful, but it's great for people to be aware of your full body of work, for your full catalog, and I felt like it was time for those songs to get another day in the sun. and to get a new treatment, an updated treatment to make sense with this new album, and just kind of revisit those early beginnings. It's kind of an evolution of where I started into where I was at that moment in time, and also just giving those songs a platform again for my newer fans to find out, about those particular tracks.
Well, I have to say, Love's the Only Drug made me feel an homage to Grace Jones. It's very, it's all up in that space. So I'm glad to say to hear that was your inspiration, because it translates beautifully, and I think the retooling was brilliant. I loved Automatic, your cover of the Pointer Sisters classic. Loved the video to that. I mean, I think it's sexy, and oh, hello. I loved how you used the laptop and your ponytail and whip it out. And then you also released in 2008 Alchemy. Talk a little bit about that and what led you to release that album.
Well, the definition of alchemy generally is, a mixture of elements to make some new magical creation. And the Alchemy album was based on remixes from Grime, Silk, and Thunder. So it was kind of a continuation, but a new version, a new magical mix of some of the great remixes that we got for the Grime, Silk, and Thunder album, for some of the singles, and also for some of the album cuts. We've had all this great material, so it's like, we don't want to just, let it sit or it doesn't see the light of day. Let's put it together as a really cool package and just get it out there to, the fans of this music. Like, let's just put it together. So Alchemy was kind of one of those. It's the first time I'd ever really done a remix album in that way. And we, instead of calling it, just the remix album of Grime, Silk, and Thunder, we gave it its own personality, thus Alchemy, a blending, a mixture of new elements put together.
Well, we just said Under the Covers remix, so kudos for you for being creative. But the same type of dynamic where you've got these amazing mixes that haven't been heard, and you want them to, they deserve to be heard, and so that's a beautiful thing. So tell me about what's going on right now. I know you've got so much shit happening right now. I have a list here. David Morales, I really love. Planet Called Love and Keeper, Robbie Rivera, Quentin Harris, Nervo, who we dig, Nicola Fasano. You got Waiting on You with Michelle Williams. I mean, talk about putting it all out there. What's going on with all this?
You know me, I'm always working. I've been working on my new album, Hero Worship, which I plan on releasing this year, finally in 2012. I promise, because a lot of fans have been like, when is this album coming out? We started talking about it last year, but that was also by design. But, it's got a lot of really great people on it, a varying list of producers, which you just went down the list of, what's happening. A lot of big producers that are huge in Europe and in America, some of them as well. And so I've been getting a lot of projects out. It's like kind of crazy, right? It's this weird synergy that happens, I guess. Also, aside from that, another track that's kind of in the more Love's the Only Drug, New Kind of Medicine kind of range is in Keeper, from the David Morales album that I did, is a track called The Rush. That's also on the Hero Worship album. That's out now on the new Cafe Del Mar series compilation. That was produced by DJ Spinna. So it is just chock full of alternate taste stuff out there. They got the 3 tracks on David Morales' album, I Really Love, which opens his album, Hello. And then Planet Called Love, which for me is like, just like this really kind of hooky, infectious, dance vibe. It's like all the things that are great about dance music, Just makes you feel good, makes you feel warm, and makes you want to put the needle to the record again, over and over and over. And then Keeper is more melancholic and, got to go back to my Diva of Despair and give a little bit of that, and that's how his album closes. Earlier this year, sort of towards the tail end of last year, I released Waiting on You with Michelle Williams of Destiny's Child. and did a duet style thing with her. A lot of people have asked, well, how did that come together? And, very simply, we just, we asked her if she would be into it. We thought her vocal style would be a really nice compliment on the track, and she was down for it. And we shot the video with Carl Giant, and it's been great ever since. We've gotten a lot of press on it. A lot of people really feeling the song. It's very kind of throwback, like old school, like, big girl song, The Robbie Rivera track, Save Me, is kind of like in the big trance, ethereal kind of feeling, which is very much what's happening in European dance music right now. Nervo is on the album. They wrote some really great songs for me. Nicola Fasano, who's been, you may know from a lot of the Pitbull hits, and just some really, really cool people in there. I try to mix it up, keep it interesting, go through the different modes of what dance music is right now, because, when I did Blue Notes from the Basement, it was still very contained in its style. But since then, dance music has house, what was considered house then, has now splintered out into so many different genres. And there's, people are all over the place in what their listening style is. And since that evolution, you had the evolution of the internet and downloading and iPods, and so people listen to all different kinds of music and out of context now. So it's a whole different landscape in terms of the type of music that you do and put out. I like a lot of different styles of music. I've always had varying kinds of remixes to all of my singles. So for me, it's just about being in it, being in the dance music genre, whatever that entails at that moment, whatever the track determines, that's what I'm going to do. As long as it's something that I soulfully feel, it may be anything from a more R&B kind of, alternative leaning track to your straight up, commercial dance record, trancey, whatever. So the Hero Worship album is about the range of what has happened in dance music from, what I consider to be the retro future, because it's all of those elements. And,
but it's been such a pleasure getting to know you as a human being, and your spirit is so wonderful. I just, I always say, if I wasn't into talk, I'd be on it, honey, on it. And, a testament to your 20-year career is the fact that, we've been talking for 45 minutes, and there's still a lot to talk about with everything you've done in your 20 years. Tell me a little bit about your now becoming a record label, your DJ career that's been in full effect. I just talked about diversifying and keeping as many things out there as possible in today's market. Was that something that you intentionally did, or was it just kind of a natural evolution as someone that's been doing this for 20 years?
As far as the DJing goes, I mean, it seems contrived to some people sometimes, but, no, I had to do it, and I had to learn it well because I wanted to be respected by my peers, and that was most important to me. I didn't want to use software that matched the beats for me, not dissing any DJs that do that, but I can get a jukebox to do that, too. I can put a quarter in and pick a couple songs, and, there you go. So, for me, it was like, I've got to be able to do it correctly. I've got to have my form correct. I got to be hardcore with it when I step on those turntables, because people are going to judge me much harsher than a Joe Nobody DJ. So I just started playing. I was offered a radio show in France, strangely enough. I DJ'd for the Tommy Boy Sunset Sessions a few years back, and actually the program director from Radio FG in France, which is like all house music, all DJ radio, 24/7, real radio station, not just website. He happened to be there, and he heard me playing, and he got in touch with me the next day and said, I want you to be a resident. And on the station, there are people like David Morales and, all of these huge, European A-list DJs, and then there's little old me in the mix, which I thought was really amazing. And I've been doing that for 5 years now. My party is going on 9 years in September, going strong, and I DJ internationally, as well as, singing and performance. So, yeah, that's just kind of where it is. And then, yes, it's kind of parlaying into a different area, but it's still, to me, all under the same umbrella of the dance music genre and being being a musician. It's just translated in a different way. And people always ask me, what do you love more, singing or DJing? And there's really no way to choose between the two. It's two very different disciplines in that manner.
Well, for someone who didn't set out to do this shit, you did this shit. I mean, there are a lot of people that, that's what they've dreamed about since they were children, and it's interesting how things opened up to you and revealed themselves to you and have evolved in such a dynamic way. And yeah, I agree with you. I'm sure the expectation was higher because you're ultimate, so you can't be like fucking up the beats. You know what I mean? Don't be like playing like up here and have your laptop underneath playing the playlist, that kind of shit. But you talked about something, and I'm going to wrap it up because we could go on and on and on. But I wanted to talk to you about what you had just said about being organic and in the moment and authentic. And so, how do you feel about like Melodyne? You know what I'm saying? There's something, I get how it's being used in today's music. Yeah, I know. And that it is a current thing that is happening. It reflects the dynamic of the marketplace right now, and I think a lot of producers are like running amok because they just love to be able to do that shit, even though it doesn't necessarily need it. And I also think, I remember a long time ago I was working with a producer, Lathan Armour, who was from the R&B world, and I sang this line, and it was a little pitchy in one place, and I was like, oh, we got to do it over. And he's like, no, you do not want to fuck with that shit, because that vibe right there is the shit. It's not about the pitch, it's about the vibe, it's about the feeling, it's about all that. Well, Melodyne takes that, in my opinion, away. So how do you feel about it, Ms. Ultimate?
Well, I completely agree. As much as there's a benefit in one way, it can be a detraction in another, because it is about the funk. It's about the feeling. And, that organic, not quite sure, insecurity in a song sometimes. You can feel that tension. That's part of like what makes a song come to life for people. That's the energy, that's the emotion in it. When you start dialing down the emotion, it just goes flatline. And, perfection is not all it's cracked up to be. It can be very boring. Sometimes it's really just about the character of a person. Many times through the years, I've had many pitch issues because I wasn't trained anywhere. I just kind of go by feel. And so I've had to learn more by doing it and just, studying my craft for many, many years. But a lot of times, with producers, we'll figure out, is it a pitch issue or is it just a character thing? Like, what are we going for when we're recording something over and over and over again? Is it just, is it off? And if it is off, where is it going? Or is it just one of my many vocal producers, but the main one, Danny Madden, who was my lifesaver many, many years ago, used to call an ultraism. And he was like, there's just these little things you do, little places, little weird melodic places that you go that are second nature to you, but it can be weird and quirky to other people in a way, but it's distinctive of your character, and that's what you don't want to remove, because then if everybody starts sounding exactly alike, then we may as well all be robots. What's the point?
Well, and I think therein also lies the individuality of an artist, the uniqueness of an artist. And I think the tendency is to process so much nowadays that when we get a real artist that we feel and that's got grit and it's got emotion and imperfections, we all run to it. It's so distinct and it's so different from everything else that's out there. And I think that those technical dynamics really sterilize music in a lot of ways. I think the other thing that happens too when you're listening to these recordings, and it's not reflective of really live music, and yet you go to a gig, and we're singing live to track. Our lead vocal is taken out, our background vocals are in, but clubs have sound issues, some clubs don't have monitors. I mean, there's all these dynamics that can lend themselves to the imperfection of a live performance, but the expectation is so about the roboticness of what the sound is coming out of the speakers when they're listening to it at home, that I think it sets an unrealistic standard for most artists, because sound systems vary from place to place, sound issues, all of those things, and then just the reality of the moment, like you said, for live performing. And I think all of this other stuff, this overly produced stuff, can really be a detraction for what you would experience and expect in a live setting. Matthew, I want to let you talk really quick, and then we'll close this out. Hold on.
Okay, so since this has to be quick, I will get my 20 questions out now. Just kidding. First off, I'll try, I don't know if you realize, but I actually created the group on Facebook, Alternate Diva on the Dance Floor, which I think is about 186 members. So I'm sure, I know you said that Hero Worship will be out at some point this year. Is there anything I can tell all the members of the group about maybe a month, or if you have an actual release date, that would be great. So I do have two other quick questions. One, what are the plaques in the background commemorating? And finally, sorry about this, because you are such a multifaceted artist, well, not because of, I recognize you being a multifaceted artist, but one of the things I was always really blown away by is the fact that you do write so many of your songs. To cast such a wide net, could you provide a little insight into what your songwriting process is like? What inspires you? Do you start with melody? Do you prefer starting with lyrics? Those kind of things. Sorry.
Okay, first, let's see. Hero Worship. There's only one song that we're still working on. We're still doing one final little tweak, which is just moments away from completion, and then we can go to mixing down the tracks that are not complete, that are not mixed already, because certain songs have already been released. So we just need to go to mix down mode, then mastering mode, and then we set the release of about 6 weeks or so after that point. So since we're going into July, I would say we're probably nudging into September roughly at this moment, like right at the end of August, September-ish, roughly, is where we're looking for. But literally, we're only like a moment away with this one song and just tweaking it finally that everybody's happy with it, myself and the producers, and feeling like, we've really brought the song all the way home. We feel like there's something there with this song. It's got a thing. But we've got to flesh it out, what that thing exactly is, and make it come to life in the right way. So, we're going back and forth, like, try this pass, or we try that. Like, the verse is not quite there yet. The chorus is pumping, but the verse still needs that thing. So it's part of the process. We could just say forget it and leave it on the side and move on with the record and keep it done. But we feel like it's a really important part of the album. So we're trying to wait another minute or two just to finalize that. So that's kind of the rough projection of where Hero Worship is at the moment. Now the second question, the plaques in the background. Let me see. There's a few different ones, and some you probably can't even see in the camera, but the biggest one that you see over here is from Spain. It's for free. When it went number 1 in Spain, I was presented with it on stage when I was performing, and I probably cried like all my makeup off. It was Raccoon City. It was just, I was totally honored. It was really sweet. I mean, the song was huge in Spain, and the Spanish community just embraced me in such a way. It was retarded. I mean, the song was huge everywhere, but they had this like really crazy, passionate thing going on, which was really overwhelming at that time. The ones kind of on the left there are the plaques from the UK, commemorating sales, when records actually sold in a real way, when people went to record stores and bought records. Those fun, good days. Yeah. There's a few ASCAP awards in the background for songwriting. I think one for Free over there, one for Found a Cure, there's one for Desire somewhere in here. And then there's some Billboard charts there of being like number 1 on Club Play and this 12-inch dance sales or something. I don't even think they do that chart anymore. But in the good old days when we first made the car, there was a chart on Billboard for 12-inch single sales, which means it was really moving. Yeah. So, these are just like my fun memories around here, And your third question, which was what? Wait a minute. I think I forgot that one. Of course I did.
What's your process writing-wise? Do you come up with a melody first? Do you come up with lyrics? Do you, get a track? I mean, what's your process?
Really, it's all of the above. It really just depends on the circumstance with whatever song. Throughout my history, songs have been written in so many varying ways. It's kind of like there's no process. There's no rhyme or reason to it. New Kind of Medicine, for example, I wrote on an airplane with no music. I just kind of heard the song in my head, and I started writing it in my seat, just humming this melody and writing these lyrics as quickly as they were coming. There was like a little 5-year-old in the chair next to me. He kept looking over like, is this woman crazy? What is going on with her? But, the inspiration was there. It was during the time that I was writing for the whole Situation Critical record. So I was always in a writing kind of mental space and always taking the opportunity whenever it would lend itself to write down any ideas that I had. And that song came in complete. Sometimes songs come to you in fragments and bits, like this is a really cool like little hook, or here's an interesting story concept, and you kind of flesh it out, which is the way a lot of records are written. You may have a concept in your head, and then when you get a piece of music in the studio with someone building from the ground up, maybe from just one or two instruments or a rhythm track, you start building that concept out of that. Twisted, for example, I wrote actually sitting at the board in London with the influence. The fellows left out of the room for a while to just let me get on with the process of writing to, this track idea that they had. It was kind of a bare bones track, and I sat there on my own and just wrote Twisted. End of story. It's a process sometimes. Free, I wrote 2 times, and then we cut and pasted it. We love this beginning of this verse and the second part of that B section there and that middle 8 and this half of the chorus, and kind of split it up and pasted it all together, and then it became what everybody knows and loves. So it is definitely a process.
And some tracks take longer to process than others. But I think, the key is your work ethic and your commitment to completing the idea and not just throwing it away or just settling for second best. And I think that's, one of the good things that's come from, the whole digital dynamic is, gone are the days where you buy an album and get maybe 2 or 3 good tracks that you like, and the rest is kind of like just fluffer. People can buy whatever songs and tracks that speak to them, and now, being that that's the delivery method, you want to make each one of those tracks say something. So, and sometimes that takes longer than others, but we're thrilled that you're still doing it. And I am so thankful that you decided to do this with me, Ultra. This is my second show, and I love you dearly, and I really appreciate you taking the time out and sharing your story and your success with us. And thank you, Matthew, for your questions. You're the only brave one. You see, we had a couple that were waiting, and then they went away. It's like, no. But anyway, is there anything else? Matthew, I see you want to say something in closing. Hold on.
I just wanted to say, Colton, thank you so much for hosting this. Alternate has been, and I'm sure will always be, my favorite artist. And I just want to say, Ultra, thank you for appeasing me and answering my plethora of questions. And best of luck with everything, and I'm so excited for Hero Worship.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I really appreciate the love and the support, and I totally remember that Toronto gig and you screaming, get it up. And, that's the fun stuff for me when I perform live, because I really love to connect with my fans and with the audience. For me, every show is completely different, and, it's like the first time all over again. It's always very special to me. With Colton, we've been in love since we first met. And a lot of people don't know, actually, and that will be something we'll speak about again later, but my album that I'm planning that's in the queue after I get Hero Worship out and promoted and has its day in the sun is that I've been simultaneously working on the next album, which is called Black Stereo Faith, and you've actually been on that record. You're on that record with me, and one of the first songs that I wrote for the album, you were there when we, Quentin and I, because it's just myself and Quentin, I wanted to work with one producer again, like let's try that again and get that organic, building an album from the ground up concept. And I was writing with a lot of my friends when I was in New York doing it, and you were one of them. So I love your writing style and your vocal style, and that's going to be a really, really cool project when we get to it, definitely. So I didn't want to forget that. And also, I'll be DJing in New York on July 9th. If any of my New York fans are out there listening, I'll be DJing for the Nervous Records party. Go to my Twitter or to my Facebook page for more information on that gig. Deep Sugar is every second Saturday at the Paradox here in Baltimore, which is a huge 1,300 square foot warehouse venue built on the premise of the Paradise Garage and, all of those wonderful, wonderful warehouse clubs that New York used to have back in the wonderful days. So we're trying to keep it alive, we keep the house music going, and everybody and anybody kind of person is there. Black, white, gay, straight, old or young, everyone is there enjoying the music. If you're down for the music, then we got you. So that's on my immediate agenda. I'll also be performing with Nile Rodgers of Chic at Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland on July the 13th, that Friday. So check that out. That'll be the Montreux Freak Out Dance Party. I'll be DJing and singing. How you like me now?
Well, thank you also. And I know you feel me on this. We come into contact with a lot of different artists up the food chain, and it's always such a pleasure to meet an artist that is as accomplished as you are, and to meet a real person. You're so lovely to be around. I so appreciate and value our friendship, and I hope when you're in town we can maybe hook up for dinner or something, because I would love to see you. And I want to mention that my album, The Way I Am, is probably going to come out around the same time as yours, and Miss Ultra is on one of the tracks, which we talked about earlier, Matthew, before the show. Get to you, and I want to do a video like fucking Soul Train, like flashback, funkadelic, but I absolutely adore you, and I thank you again for being part of my show. Hold on a second.
Thanks all.
Bye everyone, thanks for tuning in. Have a good night. 2 weeks, I'll be back. Peace.